I'm Evelyn Reed, 34, a psychiatrist at a suburban Washington hospital. I once believed my highest calling was to heal people. But my faith was shattered when I discovered the hospital director, a man I deeply respected, had turned thousands of vulnerable patients into test subjects, forcing them through dangerous surgeries and unapproved drug injections, then covering up all the consequences. He profited tens of millions of dollars from their pain and trust. Not only that, he tried to pull me into this inhumane project. I refused, and within moments I was fired. Losing my job also meant losing my ability to protect innocent patients, people with no voice to save themselves. Fear enveloped me, knowing that someone so powerful could bury all evidence, all witnesses, even my entire life. But what would happen if I abandoned them? My conscience wouldn't allow me to stay silent any longer. I must stand up, expose the man masquerading as a healer, so that these vulnerable patients are no longer treated as test subjects, but can live as human beings. Every morning I drove past the old oak trees that lined the entrance road. Their branches arched above me like a tunnel, the sunlight breaking into scattered patterns on my windshield. The building itself was intimidating, tall brick walls and narrow windows, but I had learned to see beyond its appearance. I saw the lives inside, fragile and complicated, desperate for someone to listen. Emily Carter was usually the first person I saw when I walked through the doors. She was a nurse with tired eyes and a sharp wit, one of the few people who understood the chaos and still laughed through it. She would hand me a cup of cheap coffee and say things like, "You look like hell, Evelyn. Did you even sleep last night?" I would smile and shrug. Sleep was a luxury. Healing people was worth the exhaustion. Then there was Dr. Marcus Thorne, the hospital director. He was tall, perfectly groomed, his voice smooth like glass and just as cold. When he walked down the hall, staff straightened their backs. Patients either froze or avoided his eyes. He carried authority the way some carry a weapon, always ready to strike. At first I tried to see the good in him. Maybe he was just strict, maybe he believed discipline kept the place from falling into chaos. But there was something in his gaze that made my skin tighten, like he was not seeing patients at all, only experiments. On my first morning of this story, I met with Victor Hale, a patient whose presence lingered in every corner. He was in his early 40s, eyes restless, voice low and deliberate. He had been admitted after a violent breakdown, but with careful sessions, he had begun to show progress. I sat across from him in my small office, a notebook in my lap, recorder blinking quietly on the table. He looked at me and said, "You are the only one here who talks to me like I am human." I answered softly, "That is because you are. You are not your illness, Victor. You are a man who deserves dignity." His lips trembled. "That is not what Thorne says." I felt a chill. "What do you mean?" Victor leaned closer. "He says we are broken machines. He says pain makes us better." Before I could ask more, Emily interrupted with a knock at the door. Time was up. Victor was led back to his ward, and I was left with his words echoing in my mind. Later that day, I ran into Daniel Moore in the hospital cafeteria. Daniel was not a patient anymore. He had been discharged months ago after a long struggle with trauma and depression. He came back sometimes to visit, to thank me, to prove to himself that he had made it through. He smiled when he saw me and sat down at my table. "How are you holding up, Doc?" he asked, his voice lighter than it used to be. I told him the truth. "Some days I feel like I am drowning in everyone else's nightmares." He nodded. "You pulled me out of mine. Never forget that." His words warmed me. They reminded me why I fought so hard, why I refused to treat patients like statistics. I wanted them to find hope the way Daniel had. That evening, as I prepared my notes, I passed by Dr. Thorne's office. The door was half open. I heard his voice, low and commanding, speaking to Dr. Jonathan Pierce, a younger psychiatrist who admired him too much. "Increase the voltage," Thorne said. "If they resist, it means we are close to breaking through. Do not record the side effects." "Do you understand?" My breath caught. I froze, every instinct screaming to leave, but I could not move. Jonathan hesitated. "But sir, the board will want documentation." Thorne's tone sharpened. "Then fabricate it. We are making progress here." "They will not understand until results are undeniable." I slipped away quietly, my heart pounding. That night I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, wondering if I had heard correctly, wondering if I was ready to confront a man who held the power to end my career with a single sentence. The next morning, Emily noticed my silence. "What is going on with you, Evelyn? You look like you saw a ghost." I debated telling her, but fear won. Not yet, I thought. Not until I was sure. I tried to lose myself in patient sessions, but Victor's words kept resurfacing. "Pain makes us better." At lunch, I found Daniel waiting by my car. His eyes were serious. "Doc, I need to tell you something." We sat inside with the windows rolled up. He pulled out a folded paper from his pocket. "These are copies of my old medical notes. Look closely." I scanned the pages. At first, everything looked normal, then I saw it. Dates altered, symptoms minimized, side effects erased. Daniel whispered, "This is not what happened. I had seizures, I had blackouts. They are gone from the records." I felt my stomach twist. "Who gave this to you?" "A nurse I trust. She said she could not stay quiet. She said Thorne is manipulating everything." I closed my eyes. The confirmation I feared was now in my hands. When I walked back into the hospital that day, I felt the weight of every wall pressing in on me. I looked at the patients, at Victor pacing the hall, at Maria, a young woman humming to herself in a corner, and I knew they were not safe. Not as long as Thorne was in charge. That night I stood in front of the mirror, my reflection pale and tense. I whispered to myself, "You became a doctor to protect them. Do not let fear silence you." But I also knew that the moment I spoke, everything in my life would change. The following week moved slowly, every hour stretched with tension. I walked the halls of the hospital pretending everything was normal, but inside I carried the memory of Thorne's voice like a knife pressed against my ribs. He wanted experiments. He wanted silence. And I had already seen the damage he was willing to cause. One afternoon I was called into his office. The blinds were drawn, his desk perfectly organized, a faint smell of expensive cologne hanging in the air. Dr. Jonathan Pierce sat in the corner scribbling in a notebook, too nervous to look up. Thorne gestured for me to sit. His smile was polite, but his eyes were sharp. "Dr. Reed," he began, "I have been reviewing your patient files. Your approach is unconventional." "Unconventional or effective?" I asked calmly, folding my hands in my lap. His lips curved. "Effective in some cases perhaps, but slow. Painstakingly slow. We do not have the luxury of waiting years for breakthroughs. The board wants results." I held his gaze. "Healing minds is not about speed. You know that." He leaned back, studying me. "And yet I cannot ignore the fact that your methods may lack scientific rigor." Jonathan shifted uncomfortably, finally speaking. "Evelyn, we are only trying to improve." I turned to him. "At what cost, Jonathan? How many patients need to suffer while you chase approval?" Thorne's smile vanished. "That is enough." He rose and walked around the desk, lowering his voice. "Let me be clear. You are talented. You have potential. But if you continue to question my directives, you will find yourself without a place here." I stood slowly. "If protecting my patients costs me this job, then so be it." For a moment his eyes flashed with something like anger, but then he simply nodded. "Very well, you may go." I walked out with my heart racing. Emily intercepted me in the hallway. "What happened in there? You look pale as paper." "He is testing treatments that are not approved. He is covering it up." Emily's eyes widened. "Evelyn, be careful. You know what he is capable of." "I know," I whispered, "but someone has to stand up to him." That evening I visited Victor again. He was seated on his bed, hands trembling slightly. When he saw me, relief crossed his face. "Did you tell him to stop?" he asked urgently. I lowered my voice. "Victor, I need you to tell me exactly what happened during your last session with Dr. Thorne." His eyes darted to the security camera in the corner. He lowered his voice. "He strapped me down, the electricity burned. I told him to stop and he said, 'Pain makes you stronger.' I clenched my fists. Did anyone else witness it?" "Emily was there," he whispered. "She cried afterward." That night Emily and I sat in the empty cafeteria. Her hands shook as she wrapped them around her cup of tea. "It is true," she admitted. "He forced me to assist. He said if I refused, he would ruin my license. I hate myself for not stopping it." I reached across the table and gripped her hands. "This is not your fault. He is abusing his power. We will expose him." Her eyes filled with tears. "If we try, he will destroy us." Then Daniel arrived, unexpected, carrying a folder under his arm. His face was serious. "I have more." He spread documents across the table, pages full of altered reports. "Look at the signatures. They are forged. The side effects, the complaints, all erased." Emily gasped. "My God." I swallowed hard. "Where did you get this?" "A friend who used to work records. She quit after Thorne threatened her. She wanted someone brave enough to use it." I looked at both of them. "We cannot sit on this." Emily whispered, "Do you realize what you are saying? If we go against him, he will bury us." Daniel leaned forward. "He buried me once. I will not let him do it again." I felt a fire building inside me. We would not stay silent. The next morning, I confronted Thorne in the hallway, his polished shoes clicking against the tile. He looked surprised when I blocked his path. "I know what you are doing," I said firmly. "The forged records, the experiments, the threats. It ends now." He raised an eyebrow, voice smooth. "Accusations without evidence are dangerous, Dr. Reed." Then his tone dropped colder. and dangerous people do not last long here. I stepped closer, refusing to look away. Neither do tyrants. We stared at each other, the air thick with unspoken threats, until Emily's voice broke the moment. "Evelyn, you are needed in the ward." I turned away, my legs trembling. That night I wrote in my journal, hands shaking as the pen scratched across the paper. I wrote every detail, every word he had said, every scar I had seen on my patients. If something happened to me, I wanted someone to know the truth. Daniel texted me just past midnight. "Be careful, Doc. They know we are digging." I stared at my phone, dread pressing down on me. Somewhere inside the hospital, I heard the echo of a scream, cut short by the closing of a heavy door. I whispered into the darkness, "I will not let you in, Thorn. Not this time." The following morning's sunlight spilled through the blinds, but it did nothing to chase away the heaviness pressing down on me. I arrived early, hoping to collect myself before rounds began. The smell of coffee filled the staff lounge, but my stomach churned too much to drink. Emily walked in clutching her clipboard. She looked exhausted. "Did you sleep at all?" she asked. "Barely. I kept hearing that scream last night." Her eyes darted toward the door. "Evelyn, I think we need to back off. This is bigger than we thought." I shook my head. "That is exactly why we cannot stop." Before she could reply, Dr. Jonathan Pierce entered. He froze when he saw us together. His voice was low and cautious. "Thorn wants you both in his office." My chest tightened, but I forced myself to stay calm. "What for?" Jonathan hesitated. "He says it is about patient evaluations." But Evelyn, his eyes dropped. "Just be careful." We followed him down the hall. Thorn was already standing behind his desk, a manila envelope resting on the polished wood. He smiled faintly when we walked in. "Dr. Reed, Nurse Carter, please sit." I remained standing. "What is this about?" He tapped the envelope. "Documentation. Formal notice of termination, effective immediately." Emily gasped. "Termination? For what?" Thorn's smile widened. "For repeated insubordination, violation of confidentiality, and creating a hostile work environment." I stared at him, my pulse pounding in my ears. "You are trying to silence me." He leaned forward. "I am protecting this hospital. You are reckless, dangerous. Patients are not projects for your personal crusades." I clenched my fists. "No, they are people and you are exploiting them." His smile vanished. "Get out, Dr. Reed. Security will escort you." 2 guards appeared at the door. Emily looked stricken but said nothing. My throat burned with fury. "This is not over," I said. "You can bury the truth, but it will claw its way back." Thorn's eyes hardened. "We will see." The guards led me out. My badge was taken. My access card deactivated. Just like that, my life's work was ripped from me. Outside, the September air was warm, but I shivered. I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel, trying not to cry. My phone buzzed. It was Daniel. "Meet me tonight. I have something you need to see." At dusk, we met at a small diner off the highway. Daniel slid into the booth opposite me, placing a flash drive on the table. "What is this?" I asked. "Security footage," he whispered. "Proof of what Thorn has been doing. My friend in IT risked everything to get it." I stared at the tiny device. "This could expose him." Daniel nodded. "But there is more. Thorn is not just experimenting. He is moving prescription drugs out of the pharmacy, selling them. That is why he covers up side effects. He cannot afford scrutiny." My stomach nodded. "And the patients. He uses them as leverage. He has dirt on families, records, secrets. He blackmails them for donations." I sat back, stunned. The scale of his corruption was worse than I had imagined. Daniel leaned in, voice fierce. "We cannot stay quiet." I exhaled slowly. "We will need allies. The press, the board, law enforcement." Emily joined us halfway through. She slid into the booth, eyes wide with fear. "Evelyn, Thorn knows you met with Daniel. He is furious." "How?" I demanded. She looked down. "Jonathan told him. He overheard us last night." Daniel cursed under his breath. I reached for Emily's hand. "Then we move faster. Tomorrow we start gathering everything." The next day I met secretly with Victor. He was nervous, pacing in the courtyard. "Evelyn, they told me you were gone. Did he fire you?" "Yes," I admitted, "but I am still fighting. I need your help." His jaw tightened. After what he did to me, I would do anything. That night I returned to my apartment, plugged the flash drive into my laptop, and watched. The footage was grainy but clear enough. Patients strapped to tables, needles, restraints, muffled cries, and Thorn's voice calm and clinical as he recorded data. I covered my mouth, tears spilling. This was torture disguised as treatment. I copied everything to an external drive and locked it in a safe. The following morning, Emily called in a panic. "Evelyn, they found out about the footage. Security is searching offices." "Stay calm," I told her. "They cannot erase what we already have," but my hands trembled. Thorn was moving quickly, desperate to contain the leak. That evening, Daniel and I met again. He carried another folder. Bank statements, he said, donations from wealthy families, but look closer. They match deposits into Thorne's private accounts. He is laundering money, I realized. Daniel nodded. And if we connect it to the footage, he is finished. But before we could plan further, headlights swept across the diner parking lot. A black SUV slowed near the window. Daniel's face went pale. That is his men. We grabbed the folder and ran out the back door, slipping into the night. My heart pounded as the SUV idled, then drove off. Back at my apartment, I locked the door and collapsed onto the couch. Emily texted me, "Evelyn, be careful. He is watching everyone." I whispered to myself, he will not silence me. For days we worked in secret, piecing together evidence, building a case. Every time I looked over my shoulder, I half expected to see his cold eyes watching. One evening, Victor appeared at my door, breathless. I overheard 2 orderlies. They said Thorne is preparing something drastic. He thinks someone is betraying him. My blood ran cold. If he suspected Victor, Emily, or Daniel, they could be in danger. I pulled Victor inside. "We are going to the authorities tomorrow. We have enough." But that night, a knock rattled my door. I froze. Slowly, I opened it. Jonathan stood there, face pale. "Evelyn, please, we need to talk." I let him in cautiously. He wrung his hands. "Thorne knows about the files. He thinks you are behind it. He is planning to discredit you." My voice was sharp. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because," Jonathan whispered, "I cannot keep covering for him, not after what I have seen." I stared at him, searching his face. "Then help us bring him down." Jonathan swallowed hard. "Tell me what to do." At last, a crack in Thorne's armor. I felt the fire inside me steady into resolve. The storm was coming. And this time, I was ready. I could not sleep that night. Jonathan's words kept circling in my head like vultures. For months, he had been Thorne's right hand, his loyal assistant, his echo. Now he was sitting in my living room with his face pale as a ghost, telling me he could not carry the weight anymore. I poured him a glass of water and sat across from him. "Start talking, Jonathan. What have you seen?" He rubbed his temples. "Too much. He is experimenting on patients without approval. He changes records to hide side effects. He forces staff to falsify notes. I have been part of it." My stomach churned. "Why now? Why are you telling me this tonight?" Jonathan looked up with haunted eyes. "Because I watched a patient die last week. He was strapped to the table. Thorne injected him with something new." The man started convulsing. "Thorne told us to mark it as cardiac failure. I did it. I signed the record. I cannot carry it anymore." My throat closed. "That poor man, do you even know his name?" Jonathan's lips trembled. "Stephen Hunt, 41 years old. He had 2 kids." I covered my mouth. The grief sat like a stone in my chest. Jonathan whispered, "Evelyn, he will destroy me if he finds out I told you this." I leaned forward. "Then stand with us. Help us stop him." He looked at me, and for the first time there was a flicker of something like courage in his eyes. "What do you need me to do?" The next day we met at Daniel's apartment. Emily was already there, arms folded tight across her chest. She eyed Jonathan suspiciously. "You expect us to trust him?" Jonathan lowered his head. "I do not blame you. I do not trust myself, but I cannot let Thorne keep doing this." Daniel spread the evidence across the table. Bank records, screenshots, the footage. With Jonathan's testimony, this becomes ironclad. Jonathan swallowed. "I will testify, but we need to be smart. If Thorne senses an investigation before the authorities have him cornered, he will burn everything." Emily muttered, "He already suspects us." I sat down, my hands on the table. "Then we go directly to the state board and the press at the same time. He cannot silence both." Daniel frowned. "We need a journalist we can trust." I thought for a moment. A name surfaced. Sarah Collins. Investigative reporter at the Washington Herald. She did that exposé on pharmaceutical kickbacks 2 years ago. She hates corruption. Daniel nodded slowly. "Do you know her?" "We went to grad school together," I said. "I can reach out." That evening I called her. The line was scratchy, but her voice was sharp as ever. "Evelyn Reed, it has been a long time." I hesitated. "Sarah, I need your help. I have a story that could blow open medical malpractice at my hospital, but it is dangerous." Her tone softened. "Where can we meet?" We arranged to meet the next day in a quiet park near the river. When I arrived, she was already there, hair tied back, recorder hidden in her jacket. She listened as I laid it all out. The footage, the forged records, the drug sales, the blackmail. She did not interrupt, just kept her eyes on me, sharp and calculating. When I finished, she let out a low whistle. "Evelyn, this is massive. If what you are saying checks out, this will not just bring down Thorne. It will rock the entire medical board." I nodded. "That is why we need you, but you have to protect the sources." She leaned in. "You know me, I never burn sources, but I need corroboration. Documents, witnesses. You say you have staff on your side." Jonathan stepped from the shadows. I will testify. Sarah raised her eyebrows. Well then, let us make history. The following week was a blur. We smuggled out files, copied drives, interviewed staff in secret. Every step felt like walking a tightrope above a pit. One night Emily came to my apartment trembling. Evelyn, something is wrong. A patient named Claire went missing. Her family was told she was transferred, but I checked the records. There is no transfer. My chest tightened. Thorne has her. Daniel clenched his fists. We have to get her out. Jonathan paled. If he is using her in trials, she may not survive. I stood, determination burning. Then we go tonight. We waited until midnight. Jonathan used his keycard to slip us through a side entrance. The halls were silent, the smell of antiseptic sharp in the air. Emily whispered, if we are caught, we are finished. I whispered back, then do not get caught. We crept down to the restricted wing. Jonathan swiped his card. The door buzzed open. Inside, the fluorescent lights buzzed. The air felt heavy, suffocating. We searched room after room until we found her. Claire was strapped to a bed, IV in her arm, her eyes half open. She looked skeletal, drained. Emily rushed forward, unclipping straps. Claire, it is okay. We are getting you out. Claire's lips trembled. Please, please do not let him touch me again. Tears stung my eyes. You are safe now. Daniel lifted her gently. We hurried back through the halls, praying not to be seen. But as we rounded a corner, we froze. Thorne stood there, calm, hands behind his back. His voice was smooth. Dr. Reed, I was wondering when you would come crawling back. My heart pounded. He glanced at Claire, then at Jonathan. Betrayal, Jonathan, you disappoint me. Jonathan swallowed hard but did not back down. No more. Thorne's smile twisted. You think you can win? You have no idea who protects me. I forced my voice steady. We have the truth. That is enough. His eyes narrowed. Then you are more naive than I thought. Footsteps echoed. Security guards appeared at both ends of the corridor. Emily gasped. Evelyn. Daniel shifted Claire in his arms. What now? My mind raced. We could not fight our way out, but we could run. I grabbed Jonathan's sleeve. This way. We sprinted toward a side stairwell, shoving the door open. Alarms blared instantly. My heart hammered. We barreled down the steps and burst out into the night air, carrying Claire between us. We dove into Daniel's car and sped away, tires screeching. Behind us, the hospital loomed like a dark fortress. Claire whimpered in the back seat. Thank you. I turned to look at her. You are safe now. I promise. But in my heart, I knew the war was only beginning. We drove for what felt like hours, the city lights melting into dark stretches of road. Claire drifted in and out of consciousness in the back seat, her skin clammy, her breathing shallow. Emily kept checking her pulse, whispering reassurances. Daniel finally pulled into the parking lot of a small clinic he trusted on the outskirts of the city. The sign buzzed faintly under the night sky. He jumped out and helped Emily carry Claire inside. A young resident on call, Dr. Aidan Ross, rushed over the moment he saw her condition. What happened here, he demanded. I stepped forward, my voice steady despite the chaos in my chest. She was held in restraints at St. Mark's, sedated with something unauthorized. Aidan's brow furrowed as he examined her. This is high-dose ketamine mixed with experimental antipsychotics. Who prescribed this? I swallowed hard. Dr. Marcus Thorne. His eyes flicked up, shocked. That is malpractice. That is criminal. He ordered a nurse to stabilize Claire. As they wheeled her into an observation room, Emily clutched my arm. Evelyn, she would not have lasted another day in there. I nodded, tears threatening. We saved her, but Thorne knows we took her. Daniel cursed under his breath. He will spin this. He will say we kidnapped her. Jonathan's face was pale. He already has the board in his pocket. They will back his story unless we release the evidence first. I pressed my palms against my eyes, exhausted. Sarah, we need to meet Sarah tomorrow. The next morning, Sarah Collins arrived at my apartment, laptop bag slung over her shoulder. When I opened the door, she stepped inside briskly, her reporter's instincts humming. You said you had proof. Show me. Daniel plugged in the external drive. On the screen, Thorne's voice filled the room, calm and clinical as patients screamed in the background. Sarah's face hardened. She scrolled through forged documents, bank records, emails. Then she leaned back, exhaling slowly. Evelyn, this is enough to bury him. Jonathan whispered, only if we survive long enough to release it. Sarah looked up sharply. Are you being threatened? I hesitated. Last night we were almost cornered. He has security watching us. Sarah closed her laptop with a snap. Then we do not wait. We go public tomorrow. Emily bit her lip. What about Claire? Sarah's voice softened. We protect her. She will be the face of survival. That night I sat by Claire's hospital bed. She stirred, eyes fluttering open. Her voice was weak. Am I safe? I took her hand. Yes, you are safe now. She looked at me, tears brimming. He said no one would ever believe me. I squeezed her hand. They will, I promise you. The following morning we gathered in Sarah's office at the Herald. Papers were spread everywhere. Sarah's editor, a grizzled man named Tom, paced the floor. This story is explosive. You are accusing one of the most respected psychiatrists in the state of fraud, malpractice, and blackmail. Sarah shot back, we have evidence. Tom rubbed his jaw. You will need airtight sources. Otherwise, we will get buried in lawsuits. Jonathan spoke up, voice shaking but firm. I worked under Thorne for years. I will testify. Tom stared at him. If you are lying, you go to prison too. Jonathan lifted his chin. Then I guess I am ready. Tom studied him, then nodded slowly. All right. We run it tomorrow, front page. As we left the newsroom, my chest felt heavy with both fear and hope. Emily whispered, do you realize what this means? I nodded. Once this hits, the world will know. But that evening, as I returned to my apartment, the door was ajar. My stomach dropped. I stepped inside cautiously. The place was ransacked. Papers scattered, drawers overturned, my safe forced open. The drive was gone. Panic surged. I grabbed my phone and called Daniel. The evidence, it is gone. His voice was sharp. I still have backup copies, but they know you had it. Get out of there now. I stuffed a few essentials into a bag and left immediately. My car felt like a coffin as I sped through the night. I could almost feel eyes watching from the dark. I met Daniel and Emily at a motel outside town. Daniel laid another drive on the table. This is the last copy. If they find this, it is over. Jonathan sat on the bed, head in his hands. He whispered, Thorne knows everything. He has people inside the police department. He pays them off. Emily's voice cracked. Then where do we go? I looked at all of them. We go higher. Federal, Daniel nodded. FBI? The next morning, Sarah arranged a covert meeting with a federal agent she trusted. We sat in a quiet coffee shop, the hum of conversation masking our whispers. The agent, Agent Monroe, examined the files carefully. His eyes narrowed. This is worse than we expected. Not just illegal treatments. This is racketeering, extortion, drug trafficking. I leaned forward. Will you take the case? He nodded firmly. Yes, but you need to understand. If we move, Thorne will know. He will fight back hard. I swallowed. Then we are ready. That night, as we returned to the motel, Emily froze. A black car sat across the street, engine idling. Daniel cursed. We are being watched. My pulse thundered. We hurried inside, bolting the door. For hours, we sat in silence, listening to the rumble of the car outside. Finally, near dawn, it drove away. Emily whispered, he is hunting us. I clenched my fists. Let him hunt. Tomorrow we expose him. The morning of the release, I barely touched my coffee. My hands shook so badly that Emily had to take the cup from me before I spilled it. We sat in the motel room, the blinds drawn tight, the television buzzing with static in the corner. Sarah's voice cut through my nerves. The story goes live at 8. Once it hits, there is no turning back. Daniel paced by the door, jaw tight. He knows we have enough to ruin him. He will not sit quietly. Jonathan sat hunched on the edge of the bed, his fingers twisted together, his face pale. When this is out, I am a dead man. I knelt in front of him. No, Jonathan, you are the reason this story has weight. You are not alone. He looked up, eyes filled with shame and something like gratitude. At exactly 8, Sarah opened her laptop. The Herald's homepage refreshed and the headline blazed across the screen. Renowned psychiatrist accused of illegal experiments, fraud, and blackmail. My stomach lurched. The article was long, detailed, filled with evidence. Photographs of documents, excerpts of footage, testimonies. Claire's story was front and center. Jonathan's voice appeared in print, anonymous but powerful. Within minutes, phones buzzed. News alerts flashed across screens. Other outlets picked up the story. Social media exploded. Emily whispered, it is out. Everyone knows. For a moment, we just sat there in stunned silence. Then Daniel exhaled. Now the war begins. Not an hour later, the motel phone rang. I froze. Sarah answered. Her voice was cautious. Hello, a low voice crackled through the receiver. Dr. Reed. My blood turned to ice. Thorne. Sarah held the phone out. I took it, my hand trembling. Evelyn, Thorne said smoothly, you have made a grave mistake. My voice came out stronger than I expected. No, you did, he chuckled. You think the world cares about your sob story? They will forget. They always do. Not this time, I said. We have the evidence. His tone sharpened. You have nothing I cannot bury. You are finished. I hung up before he could say more, my chest heaving. Sarah muttered, that man is cornered and dangerous. By afternoon, the hospital board announced an emergency meeting. Television trucks crowded the gates. Reporters swarmed staff leaving the building. Tom, Sarah's editor, called us. The governor's office just released a statement. They want a full investigation. The FBI is in play now. Daniel punched the air. Yes, but Jonathan looked terrified. You do not understand. Thorne will lash out. He will try to silence us permanently. That night we switched motels. Daniel insisted on keeping watch at the door with a baseball bat he bought at a gas station. Emily barely slept, twitching awake at every noise. Around 2 in the morning, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. A weak voice whispered, Dr. Reed. I froze. Claire, where are you? I am still in the clinic, she said. But men came. They said I have to recant my story or I will regret it. My stomach twisted. Did they hurt you? Not yet, she whispered. But I am scared. Hold on, I told her. We are coming. I shook Daniel awake. We drove to the clinic in silence, headlights cutting through the dark. When we arrived, the lobby nurse whispered urgently, You should not be here. There were men earlier. They said they were from the hospital. They asked for Claire. I hurried down the hall. Claire was sitting up in bed, trembling. When she saw me, she burst into tears. I knew you would come. I hugged her tightly. No one will take you again. Emily checked the IV line. They tried to tamper with her meds, she said grimly. Daniel cursed. Thorne is desperate. Jonathan stood by the window, staring out into the night. He will not stop until someone stops him. I looked at all of them. Then we need to finish this. The next morning, Sarah set up an interview on live television. Claire agreed to speak, her voice shaking but clear as she described the horror of being strapped down and injected against her will. America watched. I followed, speaking carefully but firmly. I explained Thorne's pattern of abuse, the falsified records, the extortion. I named him. By the end of the broadcast, the phones in the newsroom were ringing nonstop. Families called in with their own stories, patients came forward, former staff whispered secrets. The dam had broken. That evening, federal agents raided St. Mark's cameras captured Thorne being led out in handcuffs, his expression cold and defiant. The news anchors said words I never thought I would hear. Dr. Marcus Thorne has been arrested on charges of fraud, malpractice, racketeering, and extortion. Emily clutched my hand. We did it. But inside, I felt a strange emptiness. Justice was coming, yes, but the scars would remain. Jonathan stood quietly in the corner, tears sliding down his cheeks. Daniel exhaled deeply, shoulders sagging for the first time in weeks. Claire smiled faintly, fragile but alive, and me, I felt both lighter and heavier at once. The truth was free, but the cost had been immense. That night, as the city buzzed with headlines and sirens, I sat alone on the motel balcony. The air smelled of rain. My phone buzzed again. A text from Sarah. Tomorrow, front page again. This time with your face. The world will know who fought for them. I stared at the message. My heart pounded. For the first time in months, I allowed myself to hope. The morning after Thorne's arrest, the motel felt strangely quiet. No one shouted. No one argued. For the first time in weeks, we all slept more than a few hours. When I finally opened my eyes, the sunlight filtered through cheap curtains, and I realized my chest was not tight with fear. Emily was curled on the other bed, breathing softly. Jonathan was asleep in the armchair, his head tilted back, mouth slightly open. Daniel was snoring near the door, the baseball bat still across his lap like a watchdog who never left his post. I sat up slowly and whispered to myself, "It is over." But it was not over. By noon, reporters were pounding on the motel door. Sarah answered, waving them away. She turned back to me. "They want your face, Evelyn. They want the survivor who stood up." I hesitated. "I am not the survivor. The patients are." She smiled. "Then let them see the doctor who refused to stay silent." That afternoon, I stood in front of a wall of cameras. My palms were slick with sweat, my voice shaking at first. But as I spoke of Claire, of Jonathan, of countless names hidden in falsified charts, something in me steadied. I said, the system failed these people. Marcus Thorne manipulated power and privilege. He turned a place of healing into a marketplace for profit and fear. But patients are not commodities. Their pain is not currency. When I stepped away, the crowd erupted with questions. Sarah shielded me, guiding me back inside. Later that evening, Jonathan approached me, his hands stuffed in his pockets. "You sounded strong out there." I laughed softly. I was terrified. He shook his head. "No, you reminded me that I am not just a victim. I am a witness. That matters." Emily squeezed his shoulder. "We all matter." Over the next days, the investigation deepened. Boxes of files left the hospital in federal vans. Computers were seized. The news cycle refused to let go. Every station carried images of Thorne in his suit and cuffs. One afternoon, Sarah burst into the motel room holding papers. "Evelyn, the Board of Medicine has suspended your license pending review." My stomach dropped. "What?" She frowned. "It is protocol." They say since you were fired for ethics violations, they need to verify your standing. I sat down hard. After risking everything, now they doubt me. Daniel muttered, classic, take down the whistleblower before the dust even settles. Emily grabbed my hand. Do not give up. You are not alone anymore. Jonathan leaned forward. If they try to silence you, we speak louder. I looked around the room at their faces. For the first time, I believed them. The trial of Marcus Thorne began 3 months later. By then, I had been called to testify repeatedly. Each time I sat under fluorescent lights in a government office, my voice steady as I recounted what I had seen. Claire testified too. She trembled but did not falter. Jonathan's statement was read aloud by the prosecutor. Dozens of patients and families added their stories. In the courtroom, Thorne sat straight-backed, his eyes never leaving me. His lawyer argued that I was a disgruntled employee, that my testimony was personal vengeance. But the mountain of evidence crushed every denial. One afternoon, after a grueling cross-examination, I collapsed into a hallway bench. Sarah handed me a bottle of water. You are holding up. I whispered, he still looks at me like he owns me. She replied, that look is all he has left. The jury deliberated for 2 days. We waited in silence, pacing courthouse halls, drinking terrible coffee, trying to distract ourselves with meaningless chatter. When the verdict finally came, I felt the world slow down. Guilty on all counts. The room erupted. Families cried. Reporters shouted. Thorne's jaw tightened, but his face gave nothing away. He was sentenced to decades in prison. As the guards led him away, I felt an invisible chain loosen from my chest. Afterward, we gathered outside the courthouse. Claire hugged me, tears streaming. You saved me. I shook my head. No, you saved yourself by speaking. Jonathan wiped his eyes. Maybe now I can sleep. Daniel grinned, for once letting himself relax. Justice feels strange but good. Sarah closed her notebook. This is not just a story anymore, it is history. That night we sat around a diner booth, greasy fries between us, laughter bubbling despite exhaustion. For the first time in months, I felt joy slip back into my body. Emily raised a glass of soda. To the end of monsters. Jonathan added quietly, and to beginnings. I thought of the license board still looming over me, of the patients who still needed care, of the scars not yet healed. And I realized Jonathan was right. This was only the beginning. The next morning, I drafted a letter. It was not to the board or the press. It was to the patients who had trusted me. I wrote, I promise to keep fighting for your voices, to never let power outweigh compassion. Healing must be human, not transactional. When I finished, I felt something I had not felt in months. Peace. Sarah found me staring at the page. What is next for you, Evelyn? I looked out the motel window at the pale sky over Washington. I am going to build something better. A place where patients are safe. Where no one like Thorne can ever walk through the doors again. She smiled softly. Then maybe this nightmare gave birth to something the world needs. And for the first time, I let myself believe it. The courthouse steps were still buzzing with voices when I finally walked away. Reporters chased families, microphones shoved in every direction, but I did not want noise anymore. I wanted air. Clean air that did not smell like disinfectant or fear. Emily followed me down the block. You okay? I nodded slowly. For now. She linked her arm through mine. Then let us get out of here before someone sticks a camera in your face again. We walked until the sound of the crowd faded. For the first time in months, the city looked almost ordinary. Just strangers rushing to buses, horns honking, shop windows glowing with neon. Life was still going. That night back at the motel, I could not sleep. My mind spun with flashes of testimony, the sight of Thorne in handcuffs, the weight of every story told in that courtroom. I sat at the small desk, scribbling ideas on scraps of paper. Jonathan stirred from the armchair. You are still awake. I looked up. I cannot stop thinking about what comes next. He rubbed his eyes. What do you mean? I said they will shut down the hospital for investigation. Hundreds of patients will be scattered to wherever there is room. Many will slip through the cracks. I cannot let that happen. Jonathan leaned forward. What are you planning? I whispered, I want to start a center of my own. A place where patients are not experiments, not numbers, not bargaining chips. A place where healing is real. He studied me for a long moment, then nodded. You already saved us once. Maybe you can save more. The next morning I told the others. Daniel scratched his chin. You know that is insane, right? Starting from nothing. I smiled faintly. Everything worth doing sounds insane at first. Emily clapped her hands. I will help, whatever you need. Sarah raised her eyebrows. You will need funding, licensing, staff, and people will fight you. The board already questioned your ethics. They will not make it easy. I answered, I know, but I also know there are families desperate for help. We owe them more than excuses. Jonathan crossed his arms. If you build it, I want to be part of it. Daniel snorted. What as a therapist? Jonathan shrugged. Maybe as proof that recovery is possible. People need to see that patients can heal. The room grew quiet. For the first time, I felt like this dream might not just be mine. The following weeks were chaos. Meetings with lawyers, endless paperwork, calls to potential donors. Sarah pulled strings with contacts she had gathered over years of reporting. Emily volunteered at every free clinic she could find, learning routines and gathering supplies. Daniel helped renovate an old community building we found on the edge of town. At night, we sat on folding chairs surrounded by paint cans and dusty floors. I laid out sketches for therapy rooms, common areas, gardens. Emily's eyes lit up. Plants everywhere. Sunlight. No locked doors unless absolutely necessary. Jonathan added a library, a space for art, not just treatment but expression. Daniel grumbled, how about locks on the windows at least? Safety matters too. We laughed, the sound echoing through empty halls. It felt like hope. One evening while painting a wall pale blue, Jonathan asked quietly, do you ever feel like Thorne is still watching? I paused, brush dripping. Sometimes. Trauma is not erased by a verdict. He nodded. Same, but maybe building this place is how we erase his shadow. I reached out, squeezing his hand. Together, we can. Funding came slowly, then all at once. A foundation dedicated to mental health reform picked up Sarah's article about us and offered a grant. Families of former patients donated. Even strangers sent small checks with notes saying, keep fighting. The day we opened our doors, the building smelled of new wood and fresh paint. A simple sign read Haven Recovery Center. The first patient arrived just after sunrise, a young woman named Lily who had been bounced between hospitals after Meadow closed. Her eyes were wide with fear, shoulders hunched as if expecting punishment. I knelt to her level. You are safe here. We listen. She whispered, you do not hurt people. I shook my head. Never. She broke down, crying in my arms. That night I sat with the team in our new common room. The walls were still bare, the furniture mismatched donations, but there was warmth in the air. Emily said softly, we did it. Jonathan smiled for the first time in weeks. This feels like home. Daniel stretched his legs, and nobody's locked in. Miracles happen. Sarah leaned against the wall. People will come after you still. They will question every move. I met her gaze. Let them. We have nothing to hide. Over the next months, patients filled our halls. Some stayed a week, others longer. We built routines around trust, art, therapy, group meals. Slowly, the broken pieces of lives began to knit back together. One evening, Lily stood in the garden we planted behind the building. She held a paintbrush, her canvas splashed with color. She said, this place gave me back myself. I swallowed hard. That is all I ever wanted. But shadows still lingered. The board had not reinstated my license. Rumors spread that I was reckless, dangerous, unprofessional. I was called a savior in one article and a fraud in another. One night, exhausted, I sat alone in my office. Jonathan knocked and came in. You look like you're carrying the world again, he said. I sighed. I keep waiting for the rug to be pulled out, for someone to shut us down. He sat across from me. Then do not carry the whole world, just carry us. Just carry today. I let his words sink in. For once I believed him. The Haven grew, more staff joined, more patients healed. And though scars remained, they were proof of survival, not defeat. Looking back, I realized the nightmare of Meadow had not ended my story. It had begun it. And in that beginning, I found something stronger than fear. I found purpose. The first winter at Haven felt both heavy and light. Snow piled against the windows, muffling the world outside. Inside, the hallways were alive with voices, therapy groups, laughter spilling from the art room. For the first time in years, I felt like the air I breathed was clean. But shadows do not disappear just because we paint walls brighter. One evening, Sarah arrived at my office carrying a thick envelope. You are not going to like this. I opened it. Inside were letters from the state licensing board. They were demanding immediate proof that I had the credentials and oversight to run Haven. The words were sharp, bureaucratic, dripping with suspicion. Daniel leaned against the doorframe, reading over my shoulder. They are coming after you again. I exhaled. Of course they are. Sarah crossed her arms. The truth is you are still vulnerable. Meadow board is filled with people who were friendly with Thorne. They want to protect their own reputations by discrediting you. Emily marched in, her cheeks flushed from the cold. Then let us fight them head-on. Show them the patients who are thriving here. Jonathan muttered, they do not want to see us. They just want to bury the story. I looked at him. Maybe. But if we stop now, Haven dies. The next week, I traveled to Washington for a hearing. Sitting at a long table under fluorescent lights, I faced a panel of men and women in suits who looked at me like I was already guilty. One of them said, "Dr. Reed, you stand accused of misconduct at Meteridge. Why should this board reinstate your license or recognize your new center?" I answered calmly, "I stood up against misconduct. I protected patients from unethical practices. That is why I was fired." Another leaned forward. "You understand, Dr. Thorne was a respected figure until very recently. Your accusations painted the entire institution in a negative light." I felt anger rise. The evidence painted it. I just refused to hide it. There was murmuring, papers shuffled, pens tapped. When I left the hearing, Sarah squeezed my shoulder. "You did well." I shook my head. They were not listening. Back at Haven, Jonathan met me at the door. "How did it go?" I sighed. "We are still on trial, even with Thorne behind bars." He frowned. "Then we show them the truth again." And that is what we did. We invited reporters inside Haven. Families came forward, patients shared their stories. Lily stood in front of a camera and said, "For the first time in years, I feel human again." The news spread. Letters poured in. Supporters rallied online. And slowly the board began to soften. They sent requests for more information instead of threats. Progress was painfully slow, but it was progress. Meanwhile, life at Haven pulsed with energy. Emily organized group hikes in the snow. Daniel taught patients simple woodworking in the basement. Jonathan ran art classes where survivors poured paint onto canvas and called it healing. One evening after group therapy, Jonathan stayed behind. He set down a charcoal sketch he had been working on. It was a drawing of Haven, sunlight bursting through clouds above it. I asked, "Is that how you see us?" He nodded. "A safe place in the storm." I touched the paper gently. "You do not know how much this means to me." He looked at me, eyes steady. "You gave me back my life. This is how I say thank you." My throat tightened. "You gave yourself back your life, Jonathan. I just stood beside you." In March, snow began to melt. Haven's garden sprouted green again, and with spring came more challenges. Former Meteridge employees started whisper campaigns, claiming Haven was dangerous, unregulated, reckless. They accused me of exploiting vulnerable people for my own reputation. Sarah brought me copies of online articles. She said, "You need to prepare. This is going to get ugly." I read the words, my stomach knotting. They were rewriting history just like Thorne had tried. Emily burst out, "How can they lie like this after everything that happened?" Daniel growled, "Because power hates being exposed." Jonathan said quietly, "Then we keep telling the truth, over and over until the lies collapse." And we did. I went on local radio. Sarah wrote columns dismantling every false claim. Patients volunteered to share testimonies. Slowly, the storm broke apart. One night after everyone else left, I walked the quiet halls of Haven. The walls glowed softly under warm lights. I thought about the journey from Meteridge's cold, sterile corridors to this place filled with color and hope. Emily appeared beside me. Could not sleep. I shook my head, just remembering. She asked, "Do you regret any of it?" I looked at her surprised. "No, even the nightmares led us here." She smiled gently. "Then we are exactly where we are meant to be." That spring, the board finally reinstated my license. The letter arrived on a bright morning. I stood in the garden holding it, my hands trembling. Jonathan came running when he saw my face. "What happened?" I held it out. "It is official. They cannot stop us anymore." He lifted me off the ground in a hug, spinning me around as Emily and Daniel cheered. Sarah snapped a photo and said, "This is the picture the world needs to see." For once I agreed. That night we celebrated with cheap champagne and laughter echoing in the halls. Patients joined in, clapping, dancing, smiling in ways I had not seen before. Jonathan raised his glass. To Haven, to truth, to healing. Emily shouted to Evelyn. I shook my head quickly. To all of us. And as glasses clinked and music played from a crackling speaker, I realized something. We were not just survivors anymore. We're builders. And Haven was proof that even the darkest nightmare can give birth to light. Spring bled into summer, and Haven buzzed with life. The patients filled the halls, voices overlapping, footsteps echoing, laughter mingling with occasional tears. The days were long, but the work was good. Yet there was an ache I could not shake. Every night I left the building exhausted, bones heavy, and when I finally slept, my dreams carried fragments of screams, restraints, and shadows I thought I had left behind. One morning, Emily found me staring blankly at the garden outside, a cup of coffee untouched in my hands. "Evelyn," she said softly, "you cannot carry all of it." I gave a small smile, but it did not reach my eyes. "I know," I whispered, "but if I let go, who will?" Jonathan appeared beside me, sketchpad in hand. Sometimes he said, "Carrying it together is enough. We do not have to carry it alone." I nodded, grateful for the reminder. That afternoon, we had a new patient arrive, Marcus Bell, a man in his mid-40s who had been institutionalized for over a decade after a failed system of psychiatric facilities. He walked slowly, eyes darting, whispering to himself. Emily took his hand. "You are safe here." He flinched, pulling back. I knelt to meet his gaze. "I am Dr. Reed. We help people here, not hurt them. You will have space, you will have time." He looked at me, skepticism heavy, but he nodded. The first few weeks with Marcus were tough. He lashed out during group sessions, refused meals, and often spent nights wandering the halls. But slowly, through consistent therapy, patience, and kindness, he began to open. One evening, I found him in the art room, surrounded by charcoal sketches. They were chaotic, jagged lines, but I could see moments of peace in the edges. I asked quietly, "Marcus, may I sit?" He shrugged but did not move away. I sat beside him. "These are yours," he said. "Yes," I said. "They are yours, but I can help you understand them if you want." He looked at me like he had never looked at anyone before. "Maybe," he whispered. Days bled into weeks. Emily and Jonathan worked tirelessly, patients began creating their own routines, and Daniel organized a small woodworking program that became surprisingly therapeutic for many. One night, after a long day, we gathered on the patio. Summer breeze warm, crickets buzzing in the background. Jonathan spoke first. "I cannot believe this is real. After everything, we built a place where people actually feel safe." Emily laughed softly, "And it is only the beginning." Daniel shook his head. "I still cannot believe we survived the lawsuits, the media, Thorn, everything." I smiled, thinking of the nights I spent staring at ceilings, imagining worse and worse nightmares. "Yes, Daniel, we survived. But surviving is not enough. We heal." Later that week, Sarah came by with her camera. "Evelyn," she said, "we want to document Haven's story. Show the world how recovery looks." I hesitated. "I do not want this to feel like propaganda." She smiled. "It is not. It is truth. Patients staff the process. People need to see this." That evening, we filmed in the garden. Marcus Bell stood in front of an easel, tentative but proud, showing a drawing of the center, sunlight streaming through the windows in his painting. Claire painted beside him, vibrant strokes, confident for the first time. She looked up at me and whispered, "Thank you for never giving up." I swallowed the lump in my throat. I did not answer. There were no words that could hold the weight of her trust. The following month brought new challenges. Some former Metteridge employees began speaking out in local newspapers, questioning the methods used at Haven, calling them radical, untested. I sat in the office with Emily and Jonathan, reading the articles. Emily slammed her hand on the desk. "They have no idea what they are talking about." Jonathan muttered, "Let them say what they want. Our patients know the truth." I nodded slowly. "Yes, our patients know, and that is what matters." One night, unable to sleep, I wandered the halls. Marcus Bell was quietly sketching. Lily was reading by the window, Claire asleep in her room. The building hummed with quiet life. I paused, hands on the railing, thinking about the journey from Metteridge to here. The nightmares were not gone, but they no longer ruled me. Emily found me. "You are thinking too much again." I smiled, "Perhaps, but thinking is part of healing too." She shook her head. "Sometimes you just need to breathe." I closed my eyes, inhaling the night air. The soft laughter, the distant hum of music from therapy sessions, the quiet of lives slowly reclaiming themselves. I realized that for the first time, I was not just a survivor. I was part of a community that was stronger than the fear that once held me hostage. Weeks passed. The center grew, new patients arrived, old patients left with hope restored, and staff became more like family than colleagues. One evening, Jonathan approached me with a small sketch. It was Haven, surrounded by a garden, sunlight spilling over the roof. I looked at him. "It is beautiful," he nodded. "It is our story too." I placed my hand over the sketch. "Yes, it is, and it is only the beginning." By late summer, Haven was bustling in ways I had not anticipated. The hallways were full of chatter, laughter, the occasional argument, and the constant hum of recovery. Our small team had grown into something more resilient than I had dared to imagine. One morning, Emily burst into my office, eyes bright. "Evelyn, we have approval for expansion. The city is granting us a wing in the old community hospital down the street." I blinked. "Are you serious?" She nodded eagerly. "Yes. More space, more therapy rooms, more patients. This is it." Jonathan leaned against the doorway, arms crossed. "That also means more staff, more administration, and more headaches." I laughed softly. "Headaches are better than helplessness." Daniel grinned. "And more woodworking opportunities for me. I will never complain again." But even with good news, unease settled over me. Expanding Haven meant scrutiny. I knew the board would watch, the media would scrutinize, and some families of former Meteridge patients would never forgive me for daring to take control. That afternoon, we met with city officials. The room smelled faintly of old wood polish and bureaucracy. A councilwoman looked down at the papers in front of her. Dr. Reed, while we admire your dedication, we need assurances that this expansion will not replicate past failures. I inhaled slowly. We are committed to ethical treatment, transparency, and community involvement. Every patient's well-being comes first. She arched an eyebrow. And what of the staff you are hiring? Are they licensed, trained, vetted? Emily interjected, we have rigorous background checks, ongoing supervision, and continuing education. Our team has been with us through trials that prove their dedication. Jonathan added, we also have patient feedback systems to ensure voices are heard and respected. The councilwoman nodded slowly. We will need periodic reports, inspections, and open access to records. I swallowed. Agreed. Anything to protect patients. The next weeks were a whirlwind of paperwork, renovations, and staff interviews. Emily coordinated therapy logistics while Jonathan trained new counselors. Daniel handled repairs, small construction, and organizing patient activities. Sarah documented our progress, taking photographs and stories that would later feature in articles highlighting Haven's growth. One evening, as I walked the hallway, Marcus Bell approached me. I finished another painting today, he said quietly. I think I am ready to show it in the common room. I knelt beside him. That is wonderful, Marcus. I cannot wait to see it. He smiled faintly. I never thought I could do this. You can, I whispered. And you are not alone. As we opened the new wing, patients explored the rooms cautiously, marveling at the sunlight streaming through newly installed windows and the spacious art studio. Some cried quietly, overwhelmed by the simple comfort of a safe, open space. One young man, Aaron, who had been in multiple institutions before Haven, whispered to me, I did not think a place like this could exist. I smiled, feeling tears prick my eyes. It does exist now. And you are part of it. But with expansion came challenges. Media outlets, curious about Thorne's past and my rapid growth, began publishing pieces questioning our methods. Headlines read, Dr. Reed's Haven, Innovation or Risk. Anonymous sources claimed patients were being experimented on, therapies unregulated. Sarah arrived at Haven late one evening, face pale. Evelyn, the article is out, it's gaining traction. I rubbed my temples. Let me see. She handed me the tablet. I read the words, frustration and anger bubbling. Lies twisted into cautionary tales. Misrepresentation of patient stories, distorted quotes, insinuations of unethical practices. Emily sat beside me. How do we fight this without re-traumatizing our patients? I closed my eyes, thinking the answer was transparency. We show the truth. Open house, patient testimonials, honest interviews. No spin, no exaggeration, just evidence of recovery and care. The next week we organized tour for media and city officials. Patients, volunteers, and staff spoke candidly. Claire shared her journey, Marcus displayed his art, Lily led a small group through mindfulness exercises. The journalists were silent, unprepared for the authenticity and dignity they witnessed. Jonathan whispered, this is exactly what they need to see. Sarah nodded. They will write the right story now. And they did. Articles shifted in tone, highlighting resilience, ethical care, and the transformative environment of Haven. Donations and community support surged. Families who had been skeptical before began referring others, yet I still carried the weight of the past. Nightmares of Meteridge occasionally broke my sleep. The sound of a patient screaming in a dream made my heart pound. But each time I reminded myself of the difference we were making here. One late evening, Daniel and I were in the woodworking room. He handed me a small carved bird he had finished for the common room. I held it, feeling the weight of wood and care. Thank you, he shrugged, just a little reminder. Even in darkness, life finds a way. Emily found us and smiled. The garden is thriving, the patients are thriving, and Haven is alive. Jonathan added, and so are we. I looked at my team, my friends, my family. They had endured alongside me, believed when I doubted, and fought when I faltered. For the first time, I allowed myself to breathe fully. We were more than survivors. We were creators, builders, healers. And as I walked through the halls of Haven that night, hearing laughter, art, and quiet conversation, I realized something I had never fully understood before. The true measure of healing is not the absence of pain. It is the courage to keep building, keep caring, and keep believing in humanity even after the worst has happened. And we had built a place where that courage could flourish. The summer heat hung heavy over Haven. The halls buzzed with activity, patients laughing, talking, and sometimes crying. But as the new wing settled in, small cracks began to show. One morning I walked past the group therapy room and noticed raised voices. I paused. Inside, 2 new staff members were arguing, voices sharp and heated. Emily stepped up behind me. "What is happening here?" I opened the door. "Let's talk." One of them, a young therapist named Karen, snapped, "He keeps pushing patients too hard, Evelyn. That is unethical." Her colleague Mark shot back, "I am following the protocol." "You are letting emotions guide you, not facts." I stepped forward. "Both of you stop." Karen, Mark, tell me calmly, what is the problem? They looked at me, reluctant, then Karen spoke. "Some patients are showing distress after extended sessions. Mark keeps ignoring their signs." Mark muttered, "I am trying to help them confront trauma." I shook my head. "Trauma is not a weapon. Healing is a process, not a test." Emily added firmly, "Listen to your patients. Their voice matters." After a tense meeting, the staff left, leaving me alone in the hallway. The weight of responsibility settled over me. One misstep and we could hurt someone unintentionally. That evening, Marcus Bell had a breakdown. He shouted, screamed, thrashed in the common room. Staff tried to calm him, but he was inconsolable. I rushed in, kneeling beside him. "Marcus, look at me. You are safe here. I am not leaving." He froze, tears streaming. No one ever listened to me before. I held his hands gently. "I hear you now." Emily and Jonathan joined, quietly supporting him. Slowly, Marcus calmed, the storm inside him dissipating into shaky sobs. Later, I sat in my office, running my hands over my face. The responsibility of every patient, every staff conflict, every mistake pressed down like a weight I could not lift. Jonathan knocked softly. "Evelyn, you cannot do this alone." I looked up. "I know," he said, "let us help you. Share the burden." I nodded, but even sharing, the weight was heavy. Weeks later, a patient named Lily relapsed. She had been progressing steadily, attending group therapy, painting daily. One night she refused meals and locked herself in her room. Emily and I knocked gently. "Lily, we are here, talk to us." She shook her head, tears brimming. "I am not getting better." I crouched, meeting her eyes. "Healing is not a straight path. You will stumble and that is okay. We are here to walk with you." She finally broke down, the walls crumbling. I held her hand, whispering reassurances, while Emily called in extra support for the night. That night I could not sleep. I walked the quiet halls, watching patients sleep, art scattered across tables, quiet conversations in corners. The weight of their trust, their fragile recovery, pressed on me like gravity. Daniel found me near the garden. "Evelyn, you cannot carry all of this." I whispered, "I am trying." He shook his head. "No, you must rest too. You cannot pour from an empty cup." Jonathan appeared beside him. "He is right. We are a team. Trust us." I nodded slowly, realizing they were right. My fear of failing them had blinded me. The next day, I called a staff meeting. We sat in the common room, tired but alert. I said, "Healing is messy. Patients will relapse, staff will argue, mistakes will happen, but we face it together. No one person carries the weight alone." Karen looked relieved. Mark nodded. Emily smiled. Jonathan leaned back. Daniel added, "And we will cover each other when the nights are long." That afternoon, we reorganized protocols, added check-ins, strengthened communication. Patients were encouraged to speak up, staff to document concerns. In the evening, Marcus Bell painted again. He smiled faintly. "Evelyn, I think I am ready to show the new piece." It was a landscape, storm clouds breaking into sunlight. I held back tears. That is exactly what this place is. Storms and sunlight. Lily joined, handing me her painting. The colors were messy but alive. She whispered, "I am trying again." I hugged her. That is enough. Trying is progress. Weeks passed. Staff learned to communicate better, patients began stabilizing, and I slowly learned to delegate. The weight of responsibility was still there, but shared, it became manageable. One evening, after everyone had gone to bed, I stood in the garden. The air was warm, the scent of flowers mingling with evening breeze. Emily appeared beside me. "You look tired." I smiled faintly. "Yes, but tonight I am breathing again." Jonathan joined us, holding a sketchpad. He showed me a drawing of the center, patients and staff in harmony. I looked at them, my chosen family, my team. We had faced chaos, setbacks, and exhaustion. And still, Haven thrived. I whispered to the night sky, "We are stronger than our fears." And as summer faded, I finally felt a quiet hope. Healing was not perfect, but it was real, and we were living proof. Early autumn brought crisp air, golden leaves drifting outside the windows, and an undercurrent of tension within Haven. The expansion had gone smoothly, patients were thriving, but the world outside still whispered. One morning, as I walked to the common room, Emily met me with a tablet in hand. "Evelyn, you need to see this." I frowned. "What now?" She swiped the screen. An online article had gone viral. Headlines screamed, Dr. Reed's Haven faces scrutiny. Are patients truly safe? My stomach sank. Jonathan came up behind us. What are they saying? Emily scrolled. Claims of unregulated therapy, allegations of emotional manipulation, anonymous sources questioning staff qualifications. Daniel muttered, and of course the board will notice. I took a deep breath. We have handled scrutiny before, we will handle it again. That afternoon, I called an emergency staff meeting. Everyone gathered in the art room, tension palpable. I said, some articles and social media posts are questioning our practices. This is an opportunity. We show transparency. We show our patients and staff. We show the truth. Karen raised a hand. What about confidentiality? We cannot expose patients' personal stories. I nodded, exactly. But we can share experiences in a way that respects privacy. Therapy success, art projects, testimonials without revealing identities. Emily added, we also have supporters ready to speak on our behalf. Families, patients who consent, and volunteers. Jonathan crossed his arms. And we document everything. Procedures, sessions, progress reports. Proof matters. We spent the next week preparing. Patients painted, wrote, created art expressing their journeys. Families wrote letters. Staff recorded training sessions and therapy approaches. When reporters arrived, we led them through the center. Marcus Bell displayed his landscape painting, Lily demonstrated mindfulness techniques, and Jonathan explained group therapy methods. One reporter whispered, "This is incredible. How do you keep it all together?" I replied simply, "We trust each other and we trust the patients." Emily guided a small interview, answering questions about staff protocols, patient safety, and oversight. Karen and Mark joined, presenting data on progress and stabilization. By the end of the day, reporters left, cameras rolling, notes scribbled. That evening, Sarah came by with a laptop. Evelyn, the coverage is shifting. Positive, accurate reporting. People are seeing what Haven really is. I exhaled. Good. Let's hope it sticks. But external threats were not limited to media. One night, the phone rang late. Unknown number. I answered cautiously. Dr. Reed. My chest tightened. Thorne? No, a different voice, a former Meadow Ridge administrator. They are trying to reopen investigations, questioning past patients. Some families are being swayed. I whispered, "Who are you?" They remained vague. Just be careful. Not everyone wants you to succeed. The next day, I convened a meeting. Everyone in the room, patients included, because transparency begins with honesty. I said there are people outside hoping to see us fail. They will spread misinformation. We cannot control everything, but we can control our actions. Daniel growled, "Let them try. They will see what we are building." Jonathan nodded, "Exactly. Let the work speak." Emily added, and we continued documenting, monitoring, supporting, and adapting. Months passed. We weathered smear campaigns, city council questions, and anonymous complaints. Each challenge tested our resolve, but with careful planning, documentation, and unwavering commitment, Haven thrived. Patients flourished. Marcus Bell painted regularly, Lily taught mindfulness to newcomers, and Claire led group art therapy sessions. Families expressed gratitude and shared their children's progress. One evening, after a long day of therapy sessions and meetings, I sat in the garden. The sun dipped low, painting the sky with pink and orange. Emily joined me. "Evelyn, you look exhausted." I smiled faintly. "Yes, but the garden reminds me why we keep going." Jonathan appeared with sketches of new therapy spaces. He said quietly, "This will help more patients." I nodded, "Thank you for everything." Daniel came to water plants, muttering about how fast they grow. He laughed at his own joke. I realized then that Haven was not just a building. It was alive, breathing through the people inside it. Staff, patients, volunteers, they were the heart. And even with threats outside, I knew we could survive. One evening, Marcus Bell approached me in the quiet hall. "Evelyn," he said softly, "thank you. I never believed in myself before Haven." I knelt beside him. "You believed in yourself. We just reminded you how." He smiled faintly. "And that is enough." Weeks later, as autumn deepened, Sarah brought her camera for a documentary segment. She filmed patients, staff, and therapy sessions. We spoke about transparency, integrity, and resilience. Claire spoke on camera. "Haven saved me." It gave me trust again. I whispered behind the camera, "No, you saved yourself." Daniel grinned, looking at the footage. "The world needs to see this." As the season turned, external threats persisted but lost power against a community grounded in trust, evidence, and care. Each challenge became a testament to our resilience. Jonathan said one evening, "People will always try to tear down what they do not understand." I looked at him, watching the sunset spill across the garden. Then we show them understanding, patience, and proof of compassion. And that is exactly what we did. The first anniversary of Haven arrived quietly but profoundly. I woke early, sunlight spilling across the garden, leaves turning gold and crimson. A year had passed since the doors first opened, and I could hardly recognize how far we had come. Emily appeared with coffee in hand. "Happy anniversary, Evelyn," I laughed softly. "I did not think we would make it this far." She grinned. "You did not just make it, you thrived. We thrived." Jonathan appeared behind her, sketchpad tucked under his arm. "Anniversary sketch," he said. "You'll love it." I took it and smiled. A mural of Haven, patients, and staff mingling, sunlight streaming over the buildings, trees framing the scene. It captured the essence of what we had built. Daniel arrived, hands dirty from the garden. "Brought some flowers for the common room." He grinned. "They'll brighten up the anniversary." As the day progressed, patients and staff celebrated quietly. Some brought homemade treats, others shared art projects, and several wrote letters about their journeys and progress. Lily handed me a folded paper. "Evelyn," she whispered, "it is from all of us." I unfolded it. Messages of hope, recovery, and gratitude. I felt tears prick my eyes. Marcus Bell added his own note. "Thank you for believing in me when no one else did." I knelt to him. "You always had the strength. I just helped you see it." Later that morning, we held a group session outside in the garden. Patients shared milestones, no matter how small. Claire spoke first. "I painted for the first time without fear." "The colors are mine." Jonathan smiled. "That is huge, Claire." Aaron shared quietly. "I went to a therapy session alone for the first time." Emily clapped softly. "That is progress, Aaron." I spoke next. "Every step, every attempt is proof of your courage. Healing is not linear. There will be setbacks, but every effort counts." The patients nodded, some tearful, others smiling shyly. I realized the room pulsed with something intangible. Trust, courage, hope. That evening, Sarah documented our celebrations for a feature on Haven's first anniversary. Interviews, photographs, candid moments, everything reflected the life we had nurtured. A reporter asked me, "Dr. Reed, what has been the hardest part of this year?" I paused. Maintaining hope when the world outside constantly challenges you, keeping faith and patience when setbacks happen, and learning to trust others to share the burden. Emily squeezed my hand, and the most rewarding part, I smiled at her, seeing them thrive. Watching patients reclaim their lives, witnessing growth and resilience, that is the reward. Later, in the quiet after everyone left, I wandered the halls. The room smelled faintly of paint and paper, the garden breeze carried the scent of flowers. I paused, thinking of Metternich, the dark corridors, the fear, and the failures. Jonathan found me in the common room. "You look reflective," he said. I nodded, thinking about the journey, how far we have come. The patients, the staff, every challenge, every victory. He said softly, "You have grown too, not just Haven." "You," I swallowed. "I suppose I have. I am stronger, more patient, more aware of my limits and my ability to rely on others." Emily joined us, brushing leaves from her hair. "And you have inspired all of us." Daniel grinned. "You made us better too." That night I sat in the garden, the sky deepening into shades of purple and blue. Lanterns glowed softly, reflecting in the pond. The center hummed with quiet life. Marcus Bell approached, holding a painting of the garden at sunset. "Evelyn," he said quietly, "this is for you." I took it gently. "It is beautiful, Marcus." He smiled faintly. "Haven gave me color again." I whispered, "And you gave yourself courage." Weeks passed. Patients reached milestones. First solo sessions, art exhibits, participation in community events. Former Metternich victims found their voices, speaking publicly about recovery and hope. Emily organized workshops for families, teaching mindfulness and techniques to support loved ones. Jonathan launched art therapy exhibitions, showcasing patient creativity without exposing personal trauma. Daniel continued maintaining and improving the building, his energy tireless. Sarah's articles reached thousands, highlighting the integrity, transparency, and progress of Haven. One evening, after everyone left, I sat alone in the therapy room. I reflected on how much I had feared burnout, failure, and public scrutiny. But I realized those fears had pushed me to grow, to create structures and protocols that protected both patients and staff. I whispered to myself. Fear led to growth, despair to determination. The anniversary celebration had reminded me that recovery was not just the patient's journey. It was ours too. The team, the families, the volunteers, we were part of a cycle of healing that extended beyond these walls. Jonathan appeared with a sketch of the sky above Haven, colors bleeding like hope into darkness. Emily joined him, carrying tea. We sat together in silence, watching the lanterns glow, reflecting in the pond, thinking about everything we had endured. Emily whispered, "Look how far we have come." I nodded. Indeed, and the journey is only beginning. Outside, the leaves rustled gently, a reminder that even as seasons change, life continues. And so do we. By late autumn, Haven had grown from a single building into a hub of community healing. Patients moved freely between the main center and the new wing, therapy sessions occurred in sunlit rooms, and gardens flourished with the last warmth of the season. Emily rushed into my office one morning, excitement in her voice. "Evelyn, we have invitations from 2 other mental health centers. They want to collaborate with us, share techniques and approaches." I raised an eyebrow. "That's incredible, Emily. It is recognition that our model works." Jonathan leaned against the doorframe. "It also means scrutiny. More people watching, more questions, more pressure." I nodded slowly. "That is fine. If it spreads healing, the risk is worth it." Daniel grunted. "And maybe we get some new tools for the woodworking program. That would be nice." Sarah appeared, holding a stack of letters and emails. The public response has been overwhelmingly positive. Families, former patients, and even former critics want to learn from us. I smiled faintly. Then we make time to meet them, to share what we know, and to keep improving. The first visit was from a small center in Baltimore. 2 therapists and a director arrived, notebooks in hand, observing our art therapy, mindfulness classes, and group sessions. Claire welcomed them. She led a small workshop on creative expression. They watched patients draw and paint, ask questions, and reflect on progress. Afterward, one of the visitors whispered to me, "Your methods are compassionate yet structured. Patients are thriving because they feel safe and seen." I nodded. That has always been the goal. The second visit came from a larger center in Northern Virginia. Their staff watched as Lily guided mindfulness meditation and Marcus displayed his latest artwork. One of the directors said, "I have never seen patients respond so openly and honestly." "This is remarkable." Jonathan smiled. "It is, and it is not just us, it is the patients who allow us to guide them. But even with recognition came challenges. A former Meteridge employee circulated a rumor online suggesting Haven manipulated patient progress for publicity. I sat with Emily and Sarah reading the messages. The lies were familiar, echoing past attacks. Emily said, "We respond with proof, transparency, data, stories, not arguments." Sarah nodded. "Articles, testimonials, documentation. Let the truth speak louder than lies." We set up an open day, inviting families, patients, and professionals. Marcus presented his artwork, Claire facilitated workshops, and Lily led guided meditation. Staff demonstrated their procedures, ensuring every question was answered honestly. By the end of the day, reporters were amazed at the depth of recovery and ethical care. Positive coverage spread quickly, reinforcing Haven's reputation. But amid external outreach, internal challenges persisted. Some patients struggled with progress, others relapsed. One night, Marcus Bell became agitated after a difficult dream, wandering the halls shouting. I ran to his side. "Marcus, you are safe. We are here." He froze, tears streaming. "Nobody ever understood me before." I held his hands gently. "I understand you now." Emily and Jonathan arrived, gently calming him while documenting the incident to improve future care protocols. Afterward, I sat alone in the garden, night air crisp, leaves rustling. The burden of responsibility pressed heavily, but I reminded myself that this weight was shared with a team I trusted completely. Daniel appeared with a lantern. "You okay, Evelyn?" I nodded slowly. "The work is exhausting but necessary." Jonathan joined us, carrying sketches of patient progress charts and therapy layouts. Together, we reviewed plans for future programs. Emily whispered, "You have grown so much this year." Haven has grown. I allowed myself a small smile. Yes, we have all grown. Patients, staff, volunteers, myself. One evening, after a long day, I stood in the common room watching patients interact. Claire laughed with a newcomer, Marcus taught painting techniques, Lily guided meditation. I whispered quietly to myself. This is why we keep going. Outside, the autumn wind blew, scattering leaves across the garden. A symbol, I thought, that even as change comes, life continues and healing endures. Over the next weeks, I traveled to the other centers, consulting and sharing methods. Each visit reminded me of the importance of connection, collaboration, and spreading hope beyond Haven's walls. On one such trip, a director from a suburban center said quietly, "Evelyn, you carry so much. How do you keep going?" I looked out the window, watching sunlight fall on a quiet street. I told them, "You carry it with the right people. You trust, you delegate, and you let the work speak." Returning to Haven, I found the team planting a winter garden. Marcus held a small shovel, Claire carried pots, Lily arranged soil, Emily directed with enthusiasm. I felt a wave of gratitude and relief. We were more than survivors. We were builders, mentors, guides, and companions on a journey of healing. That night, I walked through the empty halls, soft lights glowing. I realized that for every external threat, every rumor, every challenge, there was an equal measure of courage, trust, and resilience. And Haven was proof that hope, when nurtured, can flourish, even in the shadows of past trauma. Winter approached, coating the streets and gardens of Haven with frost. The patients adjusted to shorter days, cold mornings, and the quiet weight of long nights, while staff worked tirelessly to maintain warmth, routine, and care. One morning, Emily burst into my office, cheeks flushed. "Evelyn, you won't believe this." I raised an eyebrow. "What now?" She waved a letter. Haven is being nominated for a National Mental Health Award, recognition of excellence in patient care and ethical practices. I blinked, trying to digest it. That is incredible. Jonathan leaned against the doorframe, grinning and terrifying. Suddenly, everyone is watching, judging, expecting perfection. Daniel shrugged. And here I thought we were just trying to survive another winter. I laughed softly, but unease tightened my chest. Public recognition meant scrutiny, questions, and pressure that could expose our flaws. The award committee requested detailed reports, patient testimonials, and a walkthrough of our center. We prepared for days, ensuring every record was transparent, every procedure documented, every patient comfortable with participation. The day of the visit arrived. Representatives toured the center, observing art therapy sessions, mindfulness workshops, and group counseling. Marcus Bell displayed his latest painting, a sunrise breaking through storm clouds. One of the judges whispered, "I've never seen patients engage so openly." "The environment is extraordinary," I nodded quietly. "That is the result of trust, patience, and relentless commitment." Afterward, the judges asked to speak with staff privately. Emily and I presented protocols, safety measures, and the philosophy behind every program. Karen spoke about patient-centered care. Mark highlighted data on therapy outcomes. Jonathan and Daniel provided insight into creative therapies and daily routines. One judge said, "You operate with integrity, transparency, and compassion. This is rare in mental health institutions today." I exhaled. "Thank you, that is all we strive for." As the judges left, I gathered the team. We did it. And more importantly, we stayed true to our principles. But the pressure of recognition weighed heavily. Nightmares returned, fragments of Meteridge's cold corridors haunting my sleep. I would wake drenched, heart racing, fear pressing down. Emily found me one night pacing the hallway. "Evelyn, you need rest. You cannot carry everyone's healing alone." I shook my head. How can I rest when patients rely on me when the world is watching? Jonathan appeared, placing a hand on my shoulder. "We share the responsibility. Trust us. Let us carry it with you." I nodded, realizing that the fear I carried was not just for the patients. It was fear of failing myself, of failing my team, of failing the vision we had built. Weeks passed. The award committee announced Haven as a finalist. Local media covered our story, patients' artwork was featured, and staff interviews highlighted transparency and ethical care. One evening, Marcus Bell handed me a small painting of Haven, bathed in golden light. "Evelyn," he whispered, "you gave me courage." I knelt beside him. "No, Marcus, you found courage within yourself. I only helped you see it." Lily joined, placing her hand on mine. "Thank you for not giving up on us." I whispered I could never give up on you, but recognition also brought ethical dilemmas. A journalist approached, asking if we would share patient names and detailed stories for a feature. I paused. "Absolutely not. Confidentiality is non-negotiable. Patience, trust cannot be compromised for publicity." Emily nodded firmly. "We will share experiences without exposing identities. That is our promise." Over the following weeks, interviews and articles focused on patient recovery, staff dedication, and ethical practices. Public response was overwhelmingly positive. Donations surged, volunteers increased, and families expressed gratitude for transparency and integrity. Yet amid the accolades, personal fears lingered. I worried about burnout, the weight of responsibility, and the challenge of balancing public recognition with patient-centered care. One evening, sitting alone in the garden, I reflected. I realized fear was a constant companion, but it did not define me. Courage was defined by persistence, honesty, and compassion. Emily joined me, carrying a thermos of tea. "You look deep in thought." I nodded, reflecting, wondering if I am enough. She smiled gently. "You are." Haven thrives because of your vision, your courage, and your willingness to trust others. Jonathan arrived, holding sketches of new therapy programs. You inspire all of us, he said quietly. Daniel appeared with a small wooden sculpture. And we are better because of you. I smiled, the weight in my chest easing slightly. Together, we face fear, ethical dilemmas, and challenges. We are stronger as a team. The winter evenings stretched long, but within Haven, warmth, laughter, and healing persisted. Patients celebrated milestones, staff found joy in small victories, and the community witnessed a model of care grounded in trust and integrity. One night, I walked the quiet halls, reflecting on the journey from Medridge's shadows to Haven's light. I whispered to myself, courage is not the absence of fear. It is acting despite it. And for every fear, every challenge, there was hope, resilience, and growth. I looked at the moonlit garden outside. The world could watch, criticize, or doubt. But within these walls, healing endured, trust thrived, and life flourished. Spring returned, brushing the garden with tender green shoots, and Haven hummed with life more vibrant than ever. Patients who had once arrived broken and weary now laughed freely, painted boldly, and spoke their truths with courage. I walked through the halls early one morning, sunlight spilling across the floors. Claire waved, Marcus Bell held up a new painting, Lily led a small meditation session, and Emily checked therapy notes. Everything felt alive, purposeful, real. Jonathan approached, sketchpad tucked under his arm. Evelyn, he said, look at this. I glanced down. It was a mural concept of Haven, the patients, staff, and gardens intertwined in flowing colors. It was not just art, it was a statement of what we had built together. Daniel appeared from the workshop, holding a small wooden model of the expanded center. He grinned, thought you'd like to see it. I smiled. We have all come so far. That day, I convened a meeting with patients and staff in the common room. I wanted to mark a milestone, a culmination of the journey we had taken together. I began, look around you. This room, this building, these gardens, they are not just bricks and paint. They are proof of courage, of resilience, of healing. Every step you have taken, every challenge you faced brought us here. Marcus Bell raised his hand. Dr. Reed, may I speak? Of course, I said. He stood, voice steady. Haven gave me trust. And with trust, I found myself. I painted, I spoke, I believed again. Applause broke out, some quiet, some loud, but all genuine. Lily spoke next. I relapsed once, I was afraid to show it. But here I learned that healing is not perfect. And that made me stronger. I felt tears prick my eyes. You are stronger than you know, I whispered. Claire added, I found joy here. I learned to express myself without fear, to trust others, and to forgive myself for the past. The room hummed with warmth, with the realization that every individual's journey contributed to the whole of Haven. Later that evening, Emily, Jonathan, Daniel, and Sarah gathered with me in the garden. The sun dipped low, painting the sky in shades of amber and purple. Emily said softly, Evelyn, look at this. Look at what we have created together. Jonathan nodded. Patients thriving, staff growing, a model of ethical care recognized nationally. Daniel added, and we did it without losing our principles. I swallowed, feeling the weight of every challenge we had faced. From Medridge to expansion, from internal crises to public scrutiny, from nightmares to growth, we had endured it all. Sarah smiled, and the world is noticing. People are inspired by what Haven represents, I exhaled slowly. Not by me alone, by all of us. Patients, staff, volunteers, families, we are a living testament that healing, integrity, and compassion matter. The weeks that followed were filled with quiet victories. Marcus Bell held his first public art exhibition. Lily led a meditation retreat for families. Claire published a small book of her art and poetry. Aaron completed his first solo therapy project, presenting his reflections confidently to peers. Emily organized outreach programs, sharing Haven's methods with other centers, encouraging collaboration and ethical practices. Jonathan launched community art events, integrating therapy and expression. Daniel continued enhancing the building and gardens, ensuring spaces remained welcoming, safe, and inspiring. One afternoon, a journalist approached me for a final interview. Dr. Reed, they asked, what is the secret to Haven's success? I thought carefully, then replied, there is no secret. Only trust, transparency, and unwavering belief in the human capacity to heal. We listen, we adapt, we respect every person's journey. And we remember that even when the path is dark, hope endures. Later, as I walked through the garden alone, Marcus joined me, holding a small painting of a sunrise over Haven. Evelyn, he whispered, thank you. I smiled, placing my hand gently over his. No, Marcus, thank you for letting yourself believe again. Night fell and the lanterns in the garden glowed softly. I breathed in the cool air, feeling gratitude, peace, and a profound sense of accomplishment. I whispered to myself, this is what matters: courage, compassion, healing, integrity. Every struggle, every setback, every fear led us here. And I realized, as I looked at the silhouettes of staff and patients moving through the warm glow of the center, that Haven was more than a building. It was a living testament to what humanity can achieve when guided by care, trust, and perseverance. I thought of the shadows of Meadow Ridge, the nightmares, the fear, and I understood. We cannot erase the past, but we can build a future stronger than any darkness. Marcus Bell placed a small hand-painted sun in my palm. "Evelyn," he said softly, "this is for you." I looked at it, smiling through tears. And in that moment, I knew the light we nurture together will always outshine the shadows. Haven was no longer just a dream. It was a reality, a sanctuary, a home, a beacon of hope. And as I stood there, surrounded by life, laughter, and healing, I whispered one final truth. Courage is not the absence of fear, integrity is not the absence of challenge, and hope is not the absence of pain. But together, they create a world where recovery is possible, hearts are mended, and humanity thrives.